The milli block. I've been doing this drill for years, but was recently very impressed by Mr. Roger Federer during the lockdown, who posted this video of him doing something similar. Like a lot of things professional athletes do, it might not seem impressive until you try it for yourself. I put a link to the tweet in the text description, and if you take the time to follow it, watch how little he uses his arm. Start by standing against the front wall. Then simply hit the ball against the wall. You'll notice that I initially keep my arm about a body's width away from the wall, but then I move my racket and arm much closer to the wall. Do not flick your wrist. Do not move your arm too much. Your objective is to get very close to the wall and maintain control. The closer you go to the front wall with your racket face, the less you move your arm. Keep the racket face open and move the racket in a horizontal movement. If you want a challenge, do 100 with no mistakes. The lob thyself. The better you get as a player, the better and more often you use the lob. There's a saying in English, the best form of defence is attack. And in squash, it's often misunderstood to mean either going for a nick or hitting the ball as hard as you can when you're under pressure. But the smart player plays a shot that gives themselves time, has little chance of an error, and also makes it difficult for their opponent. And the perfect shot for that is the lob. Starting on or near the short line, try to hit a lob over yourself. At first, you might find this harder than you expected. That's because you might not have hit many high shots. Try to use a slightly horizontal swing rather than a swing like a U. This will allow you to develop a good lob even when the ball is low. Focus on where your lob hits the front wall. Adjust the next shot's speed and height based on the last one. If you can, smash the ball to feed for your next shot. Those more athletic viewers can try to jump to play their smash. I couldn't do it. You should quickly find that it's not too hard to lob yourself, depending on the height of the ceiling. If you have a low ceiling, then your accuracy and control need to be perfect. If you play on a high ceiling court, then it's easier and you really should be using that height. I found 2 minutes of this drill very tiring for my shoulders. Badminton and tennis players might be more comfortable with the smash part. Do not try to hit the smash as hard as you can and 1 centimetre above the tin. You're not trying to hit a winner, just feed for the next lob. I talk about this concept quite a lot, but you really should be comfortable with the speed and height on the front wall of your shots. The down low. Starting about 2 meters away from the wall, you're going to hit some low volleys to yourself. Doing this drill low forces you to control the ball with more precision than is needed when hitting shoulder height volleys. That's because you have less room for adaptation, and you need to hit the ball a little bit harder. Keep the racket face open and use a blocking motion rather than a swinging motion. Speed is key here. Too fast and you may lose control. Too slow and the ball moves in an upward motion instead of a more horizontal flight path. Take a break if your technique falters. Better to do 2 or 3 sets of 20 great shots than 100 shots where the ball is moving upwards. The killer probe. A probing shot is one that hopes to elicit a weaker return from your opponent, but doesn't contain too much risk. This is such a shot. Unless you're trying to hit it 1 centimetre above the tin, this shot has little to no chance of hitting the tin. Hit hard and tight. It rushes your opponent and hopefully forces them to play a weak or defensive shot. You are not trying to win the point outright from this shot just to get a weak return, although many times you might win the point. From your preparation, you could hit lower and harder and try for a nick, straight or cross court, or you could play deep on either side and even boast it. So it should be hard for your opponent to tell what you're going to do based on your preparation. This shot can be played whenever you're balanced and have enough time to prepare properly. With practice, you can hit the ball very hard and tight, causing your opponent lots of problems. Prepare early, watch the ball hit your strings, keep your head still for a fraction of a second, and above all, assume your opponent is going to reach the ball and be ready to pounce on their return. The vertical volley. I actually think this is one of the best single drills anybody can do. Admittedly, it's not creating a real-world situation, but that's its point. The drill isolates the forearm muscles used when hitting a drive. When performed correctly, you should find your forearm aches after just a minute or so. Attempt to keep the racket vertical, hence the name. The racket face should be open upon impact and the flight of the ball should be as flat as possible. You might find that you can keep the ball tighter than when you're making contact with the ball lower. Start about 2 meters away from the front wall and keep your arm shoulder height. Use some arm movement. It's not just a rotation of the forearm. Now it's time for the quiz. I mentioned this in the introduction, hopefully you were paying attention. Question number 1. Should you flick your wrist in the mini block? No. You should be using a stable, solid wrist and just using your arm in very small movements. Number 2. What path should the racket take in the lob thyself hit? And the answer is a parallel one. You don't want to be coming in a U shape, you want to be trying to come across. Now obviously you'll need to come under the ball. There will be a little U, but it's not going to be a big U. You want your racket head and your wrist to be parallel with the ground so that you can really get under the ball. Number 3, what's the main benefit of doing the down low volleys? Well, the answer is that it requires more control and strength in your forearm than the higher volleys. Number 4, how high should you hit the killer probe shot? Well, low enough so that the ball doesn't go all the way to the back, but high enough so that it has very little chance of hitting the tin. And number 5, what muscles does the vertical volley isolate? And the answer, the forearm muscles. This motion is the motion that you require when hitting the ball, and this type of volley isolates that